big deal was I was able to walk away from it.
I looked out the window, and I had to look back when I went across the finish line.
2 more turns to go. Richard Petty still side by side. Sonny Ellison still hanging in third. Oh! Petty has got to leave it. There comes Walter down below him, and Petty stood up high.
You know, I don't think there's been any race ever where that much excitement happened in that short a period of time.
Money is sideways, but wins the race, crashes, and he wins anyway. How about that?
Are you ready to relive some of NASCAR's greatest finishes and closest calls? Well, I am. Hello, everyone. I'm Benny Parsons, 1973 Winston Cup champion. And in the next half hour, we're going to take you on a ride through some of NASCAR's most exciting moments. And we've only picked those moments that will make you sit on the very edge of your seat. The seesaw battles, photo finishes, wild finishes, and we'll hear from the legends who made these moments happen. And they'll tell a story in a way you've never heard before. So are you ready? I know I am. Let's get to the racetrack and start way back in the year 1959 at the grand opening of the Daytona International Speedway. This race brought in the new era in stock car racing. After a decade of racing on the hard-packed sands of Daytona, the legendary founder of NASCAR, Bill France, had just completed his greatest undertaking, the building of the 2.5-mile Daytona International Speedway. It was the first high-banked oval that any of these drivers had ever seen, especially since these men were used to Saturday night racing on quarter-mile dirt tracks carved from cornfields. The great names and faces of the era were all present for the debut. Fireball Roberts, Junior Johnson, and defending series champion Lee Petty were ready to undertake the new challenge of the gigantic oval. Now, the most amazing thing about this first race, and for the current race day fans, this would be hard to believe, but it is true, was that despite the fact it was the first time any of these drivers had ever raced on a super speedway, there was not a single wreck or caution flag all day long. It's true, 59 drivers battled for nearly 4 hours at an average speed of 135.521 miles per hour. But that doesn't mean the racing wasn't fierce and right down to the wire. The lead would change 32 times that day until 2 cars sprinted for the finish. And at first glance, it looked like Johnny Beauchamp and Lee Petty tied. The third car in the shot is Joe Weatherly, and he's 2 laps down. On site, Beauchamp was declared the winner.
Johnny Beauchamp, he and I were running on the last lap. And going out of the third turn, up fourth turn there, he went high and I went low. I went across the finish line, and somebody said, well, how'd you know you won the race? I said, I looked out the window and I had to look back when I went across the finish line.
But the photo finish was scrutinized, and it was 2 days later, with Lee Petty still saying he won, that France reconsidered and Petty was given the victory after all.
And Weatherly was a lap down, and he was in the bunch with 3 of us. I'm sure there's been 10,000 pictures out of that finish. And he was trying to help Lee win the race because he was NASCAR and Beauchamp was kind of a foreigner. And Lee said sometimes he was trying to help, but at other times he was getting in the way. So I don't know. It turned out that we won the race, but they first give it to Beauchamp, and then there were so many amateur photographers that sent film in that they finally give us the race.
Felt real good. Felt real good. In fact, felt so good back then they didn't make much money. I got $11,000 for winning the 500 race. Now that's something, ain't it?
While the close finish and continuing controversy helped put the sport on the map, that February in Daytona was the beginning of the name Petty writing their own chapter in the NASCAR history books. And by 1979, after 6th Winston Cup championship, there was no disputing the fact that Richard Petty was the king of stock car racing. During the 1979 season, Richard was gunning for an unprecedented 7th championship, but was being challenged each week by a young upcoming star, Darrell Waltrip. And on an early spring day in Darlington, fans witnessed a changing of the guard. The race was the Rebel 400, and what happened in the last part of the race was a duel only champions could battle.
Well, you can see it happening right before you. They're coming to turn 3. 2 more turns to go. Richard Petty still side by side. Donnie Allison still hanging in third. Oh! Petty has got the lead, but there comes Walter down below him as Petty stood up high. Donnie Allison trying to move past Petty into second place. They're coming to the finish line. It is Darrell Waltrip winning the Rebel 500. Petty is second.
Darrell and myself were racing, and at that time I think Donnie Allison was third, and he was back a pretty good ways. So we got to racing each other. I'd pass on one lap or on one corner, and Darrell would pass me back on the straightaway or on the other corner, and we went back and forth, back and forth. We must have passed each other like a couple of times a lap for the last 3 or 4 laps.
This is back when the track was really treacherous. It was slick, they bear greased it all the time, and you really never raced anybody, you only raced the racetrack. Come down about 10 to go, and Richard hadn't really been all that good all day, but he caught me. And the first thing you know, Richard and Donnie Allison and I were in a real dogfight. And Richard and I were passing back and forth. We passed each other 4 times on the last lap at Darlington. And I mean, we never touched. It's not like we ran into each other, knocked each other out of the way. We literally, he passed me going down the front. I passed him in turn 1, he passed me in turn 2. We passed again going down the back. We passed again up in the middle of 3 and 4. And all the time, Donnie was sitting back here watching all this, knowing that if we screwed up, he had to race one. But anyway, we come down to the white flag, and as I said, we passed each other 4 times. And we go into the 3rd turn, and we're side by side. Richard's on the inside. He's got the preferred line. Donnie is lingering back just far enough so that when we crash, he can get through. We get to the 3rd turn. I run Richard in as far as I can run him, and then I just slam on the brakes. Richard goes in too hard. He goes up the hill. I turn hard left, get in the gas, drive between him and Donnie Allison, pass Richard because he's about to hit the wall, get the lead, win the race.
He just wound up being in the lead on the right time. If it'd been another lap, I'd have probably been in the lead. It's very exciting. It was a super race. You know, I mean, even though you run second, you teed off at yourself for letting somebody beat you, but you know you was in a race, and you know you did as good as you could, and you know you felt real good about it.
Now, that was a kind of racing that kept you on the edge of your chair. And yes, I was there. Walter would go on to win 3 championships during the 1980s and would continue to attempt to dethrone the king. Ironically, 1979 would be Richard's 7th and final championship season, but not the end of his visits to Victory Lane. In fact, there were milestones to be had for Richard, and in 1984 he earned one that will go down in that special category in sport, unbreakable. Well, maybe someday someone will challenge his mark of 200 career wins, but I gotta believe it won't happen in my lifetime. So let's go back and visit Daytona, this time July 4th, 1984, to relive a victory that is perhaps one of the greatest finishes of all time.
200th win, July the 4th, President of the United States. You win it on the last lap. I mean, you know, it was everything that you would ever want to get into one race. We put it all together in one deal. At that time, Cale was running super good, and I was running super good, so we got to racing with each other, and come down to the last 4 or 5 laps. You know, we've been changing the lead, and I think we just got in line, and he was following me, waiting for the last lap. We ran side by side down the front stretch, and I had the inside groove on him, and we touched a few times, but anyhow, when we got to the start-finish line, I beat him by a couple of 3 feet.
I had him set up right exactly where I wanted him, waiting for that final lap. Slingshot him to the finish there, and the caution flag came out with 3 laps to go. I said, this thing's gonna finish under caution. I gotta go now. I don't have time to set him up like I would have if it was 2 laps later. And so I made a run at him and got by him down the backstretch, but didn't have enough momentum to stay in front of him, you know, till we got to the start-finish line. He beat me just a foot, and that was tough one to lose because I had him just where I wanted him, even though I'm glad, you know, that he won his 200th. But and the bad thing about that, Benny, was I knew whoever got back to the start-finish line was the winner of the race. Well, my brain jumped out of gear. There was 2 laps left, see? So the next lap, thinking, you know, well, he beat me, the race is over. I came down pit road and still had a lap to go. Went from 2nd to 4th, I think.
We was able to pull it off, and never pulled any more of them off, but I guess we used up all our luck in that one race.
You really can't say enough about the King and his rivals during the era that became the foundation for what we see in racing today. And one thing some of the past legends have contributed to the sport have been their offspring. Just about everyone had a son that followed in his footsteps behind the wheel of a race car. And in 1991 at Michigan, 2 second-generation drivers went head-to-head in a great finish.
Dale Jarrett's car is on the low side. Off the 18 degrees of banking, they go down on 5 degrees of banking, and Dale Jarrett wiggles a little bit as they come out of the second corner. They bump, they touch, they rub, going down the backstretch, side by side, wheel to wheel. Who is it going to be in the Champion Spark Plug 400? Jarrett has the slight advantage as they go into the third and fourth corners. Davey Allison battles back on the outside. It's going to be a photo finish. They touch coming down through the tri-oval at the line. Who wins it? I believe Jarrett.
I think one of the races that deserves to go down in history as one of the better races in NASCAR Winston Cup racing is the 1991 race at Michigan when Dale Jarrett beat Davey Allison to the line. They raced side by side for about the last 5 laps, and as they came off of turn 4 for the checkered flag, Davey had him by about maybe 2 feet.
Knowing how strong Davey's engine was, I was going to have to really go, and I didn't crowd him out too much, but as we got off of turn 4, Davey had a slight advantage, and our cars touched twice, I think, there. And at that particular time is when I drove my car down the hill, and I think that's what propelled me to win by about 8 inches. So it seemed like it took forever to go around that last lap to me, that things were just happening in slow motion, that I wasn't going as fast as I needed to be going. And as we got closer to the start-finish line, I realized that it was going to really take a surge for me to win my first race.
One of the closest finishes in all of NASCAR Winston Cup racing, and certainly a very exciting one to see 2 second-generation drivers going at it in that manner. Of course, naturally, I was proud that Dale came out the winner of it.
You know, unfortunately, there are times in racing we witness things we'd much rather forget, such as some of the incredible crashes. The good news is that NASCAR has made these cars so safe that most of the time the drivers walk away. A real tribute to technology and the research that goes into the race cars. With that in mind, one close call comes to mind. Valentine's Day 1988, Richard Petty makes his 29th appearance in the Daytona 500, when all of a sudden the crowd silenced in disbelief as the King went tumbling down the front stretch. It was the day everyone thought the King was dead.
I got more publicity out of that one wreck than winning 7 Daytonas, because every sports program you'd see for the next week or 2 weeks, they would have to show that leading in or leading out of a sports deal. So we got a lot of publicity out of it, but the big deal was I was able to walk away from it. That was a situation that you just look at and say, well, the good Lord just didn't want you to go that time. He was wanting you to be spectacular, but he wasn't ready to take you.
They were replaying it on a closed circuit TV. And I stopped, and all at once it hit me that this was Richard in this car, and it was just flipping and coming apart. And even when it stopped in the middle of the track, he took a tremendous impact again. And I thought, the first thought in my mind was that they're not being truthful here. You know, I know he must be dead. I walked back to the area where they had brought him in, and there he lay. And he smiled, and there was not a scratch on his body.
The Daytona 500 has always been a crown jewel in a driver's career. I won the event in 1975, and it's still one of my most coveted victories. I'll never forget the feeling I had that day. There's nothing better than winning the Daytona 500 by defeating the man who is considered the best in the sport, especially when it's the one event he has never won in his career. That man would be Dale Earnhardt. And in 1993, he battled Dale Jarrett in another duel of second-generation drivers in the closing laps of the 500. After winning 5 championships in his remarkable career, Dale Earnhardt desired one win above all others, the Daytona 500, the only win that eluded him in 17 tries. He was a contender throughout the race, and as the laps wound down, his closest challenge came from Dale Jarrett in his second season with former Washington Redskins coach Joe Gibbs' Interstate Batteries team. Rusty Wallace had the crowd holding their breath as he tumbled end over end in the backstretch, destroying his race car. With Wallace out of the picture, it came down to the final laps between Jarrett and Earnhardt.
Here he comes, Earnhardt. It's the Dale and Dale show. It's become off of turn 4. You know who I'm pulling for. It's Dale Jarrett. Bring her to the inside, Dale. Don't let him get down there. He's going to make it. Dale Jarrett's going to win the Daytona 500. All right. Oh, look at Martha. Oh, dear. Oh, can you believe it?
I think the thing that I'll remember the most is just crossing the start-finish line there on the last lap. Unbelievable feeling, and then just everything after that for about 3 weeks. How crazy everything was, and the special feeling that it was for my family and I, and just seeing my wife Kelly's eyes when I got in victory lane was worth the whole time. You know, it's hard to remember. I had to go back and watch it some because I think I was so focused on what I needed to do or what I wanted to do that I remember going down as I got beside of Earnhardt coming to get the white flag, I knew I needed some help. I didn't get up far enough as what I wanted, but when I saw Jeff Bodine come in behind me, I just wanted that little push to get me in front of Earnhardt getting into turn 1, and when I did that, as I look back on the tape and see Jeff Bodine almost get up beside of me after I slid up in front of Earnhardt, I had no idea that Jeff was even down there. I just knew that I wanted to get in front of that 3 car, and when I did that, then I knew my next thing was to keep him behind me somehow, some way. And my car was so good that it allowed me to get to the bottom of the racetrack in 3 and 4. And I knew once that I got there that they were going to have a hard time getting by me. We were either going to have a big wreck or I was going to be okay and win.
Was it like just something building, ready to explode when you got to start finish?
Yeah, I wasn't breathing, so yeah, I was ready to explode. So yeah, I think as I got closer and closer, it was just like the seatbelts weren't going to hold me in there any longer.
So victory eluded the Intimidator again, but the celebration at the Jarrett household would last for a long time. That great finish was Coach Gibbs' first victory in NASCAR racing. What a welcome. You know, when Dale Earnhardt was labeled the Intimidator, there was probably no better description for his driving style. And one rainy night in Bristol, Tennessee, in the summer of 1995, he lived up to his reputation. Mark Martin started on the pole as the rain delayed the start of the Goodies 500 on a Saturday night in August. Once the cars hit the track, things heated up quickly. Rusty Wallace had a great run riding in 4th. When on lap 31, he was tapped on the rear by Earnhardt's 5th place car, and Wallace spun. And Irate Wallace told Earnhardt what he thought by driving alongside of Dale during the caution. NASCAR punished Earnhardt by putting him at the end of the lead lap. That didn't hold him back as he continued his charge to the front, letting those in his path know he was there.
Ricky Rudd moves back out of the racetrack, and they call this guy the Intimidator, and he's intimidated Dick Trickle and others.
Low side. 17 right behind him now.
He's not passing just back markers. Now he's second.
Now, Terry Labonte didn't put up a fight.
No.
There we see Earnhardt is right behind Mark Martin, the Valvoline car. And he's going to the inside and going by Mark Martin.
Yes, he is. That moves him to 6th.
After various pit stops, Earnhardt found himself back and forth from the lead position until during the 13th caution flag of the night, he was forced to make 2 pit stops after his car began smoking due to a cracked oil cooler. But that didn't hold him back as he hurried to the front, allowing no one to stand in his way. With 69 laps remaining, Terry Labonte assumed the lead. With 12 laps remaining, Labonte's position seemed secure until he came upon lap traffic in the final lap that allowed Earnhardt to close in and make for an electrifying finish.
He'll get the white flag this time around. There's Earnhardt lurking in 2nd position off of corner 4. Terry Labonte gets the white flag, but still has his traffic to contend with.
Jeff Bodine had to come in for a splash of gas. Or a flat tire or something.
Now let's see, they're down to 4 or 5 car lengths.
And a slow car right, and Earnhardt is right on his back bumper.
Let's see what strategy. He pulls. Oh, Labonte is sideways but wins the race, crashes, and he wins anyway. How about that?
Whoa! That was a finish, wasn't it? Oh, I'll tell you, our Kellogg Chevy ran great all night there. And lap cars, you know, were running side by side, racing each other at the end, and Dale caught me and gave me a little shot in the back there, and I just stood in the gas, and, you know, we beat him across the line.
I've been in a wreck before in the last lap, but not one, but never quite like that.
What a finish. That's as excited as I've been in a long time. Labonte's margin of victory was just 1/100th of a second. Unbelievable. You know, watching that finish again brings to mind one other great finish that was just as exciting. It was one hot night in Charlotte at the Winston of 1992. The great thing about the Winston All-Star race is that championship points aren't awarded. It is a true dash for cash, and thus for all the drivers, winning is the way to a huge payday. And in 1992, for the first time, the event was held under the lights in Charlotte. That night was even more special because two familiar names were the headliners, Petty and Allison. This time, it was sons, Kyle and Davey, battling for the checkered. Davey sat on the pole and won the first 30-lap race, dominating the heat and earning $100,000. The field was inverted for the next 30-lap dash. Thus, Allison was sent to the rear of the pack. Petty emerged on lap 4 to take the lead and held off Ernie Irvin for the victory. Allison finished 6th. The showdown was set for the final 10-lap dash and $200,000. Petty jumped out to a substantial lead as Dale Earnhardt made his way through the pack, edging Ernie Irvin for 2nd place. On lap 3, Darrell Waltrip spun and stalled. Meanwhile, Allison had moved his Ford to 3rd, setting the stage for a Petty, Earnhardt, and Allison showdown for the remaining 7 laps. At the white flag, Earnhardt had the lead, Petty a close 2nd, and Davey was right behind. Down the backstretch, Petty put the moves on Dale Earnhardt. The Intimidator retaliated by nearly taking Petty in the backstretch grass. Going into turn 3, Earnhardt hit the corner first and lost control. Petty lifted to gather his Pontiac. But while Petty checked up, Allison continued and got a strong drive off 4. He pulled to the inside of Petty in the middle of the trioval and had the momentum. They touched twice before Allison inched ahead to take the checkered flag. They touched again as they crossed the start-finish line, sending the 28 car wildly into the wall. The crowd stood for over an hour, still stunned at what they'd seen.
I think we were both so relieved to get to the start-finish line that we just both let up a little bit, and when we did, we both got together one more time and Davey wrecked, and you know, I don't think there's been any race ever where that much excitement happened in that short a period of time. When you look at a 1.5 mile track, you're saying, okay, the last half mile of the race, you had 2 wrecks, everybody was spinning, crashing, so it was pretty exciting. It was exciting for me anyhow.
Dale did what he had to do, and Kyle did what he had to do. Probably should have done a little bit more, but he did what he had to do at the time. And Davey took advantage of it, and it was frustrating to lose the race, but it was a great thing to be involved with. That was just a super night.
It was really scary to know how hard he hit that wall. He hit it on the driver's side. And myself and Joey and a couple of the guys was the first one to him down there in turn 1. And that's probably the scaredest I've been, because when I got down there and that car was tore up as bad as it was, and he was slumped over, I mean, I just knew he was hurt really bad. It just didn't dawn on me that maybe he just knocked out, because I had saw him hit that wall driver's side, and I know it's a bad deal, but I just remember him finally looking up at me and giving me that thumbs up, and then I knew that even though it probably wasn't going to be me that was going to have to be put in that helicopter and carried out of there, that it was all worth it, you know, because that's what we worked so hard for, and he drove his guts out, was to win.
Davey would celebrate in the hospital for a couple of days, but would be okay. Talk about a close call and great finish all at once. You know, that finish truly personifies the determination and courage of NASCAR stock car drivers. Well, that's all the time I have to show you during this visit. I hope you've enjoyed our journey through NASCAR's greatest finishes and closest calls as much as I have. And remember, our journey continues in Volume 2. For now, I'm Benny Parsons. Thanks for joining me, and see you next time when we revisit NASCAR's greatest finishes and closest calls.